Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Black Carnivore Podcast. I am really excited to bring our guest today, Sontina. She has had amazing success. I'm sure by now you've seen her thumbnail and everything. You've seen the before and after picture. She's really had a lot of success on the carnivore diet, and I just wanted to bring her story here to see if it would be helpful to anybody else and inspiring to anybody else who's thinking about following this way. So without further ado, let's just jump right into it. What's your beginning? How did you get here? Why did you decide to do this?
Oh, well, like many of us. So I started, like I told you, I lived in New York back in the day, and I was having my first son, my first child. And well, actually, let me go back a little bit before that. Before I ever was having children, I was newly married, and I was having just incredible issues, like with my joints and my arms and things like that. And I was really like, what is going on? And I felt really young, and I felt like I'm breaking down. And I went to see this doctor in New York, and she came and she told me, she said, I'm pretty sure about everything you're telling me that you have RA, and let's test you. And so she tested me, and she said it came back negative, but I'm almost positive this is what you have, and I want to go ahead and start you on chemo. And I was like, whoa, I just came in for like doctor's appointment.
What's RA?
Oh, I'm sorry, rheumatoid arthritis. So
and that's treated with chemotherapy?
This is what she told me. Yeah, so some people that do have really severe RA, they have to do chemo. And here's the reason why. She told me that with RA, you can only be where you are today. You can never improve. It will always stay where it is. And so she told me that in order to start these this chemo treatment, that she can keep me where I am. But if I ever stop taking the chemo or the RA drugs, that I would decline. And if I wanted to come back to taking the medication, that would be my new level. I could never improve. I could never get better. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh my God, what is she talking about? Chemo is, and so I said, well, I need a minute. And so I called, my newly married husband, and talked to him. And he basically was like, run, like get out of this doctor's office. What is this lady talking about? And so she came back in, and I told her, I said, I think I'm going to decline. And she began to tell me like, you can never have an unplanned pregnancy. Like, we have to go by the book. We have to be watching all this, all that, I really think you should do this treatment and all of that. But I made the decision to walk away. And I then went on, found out, little did I know, that I found I was pregnant 2 months later. And so had I started this chemo, could you imagine, like, I definitely wouldn't have been pregnant 2 months later, and had my son. And she told me, she said, during a pregnancy, you're going to feel really great. But as soon as you have the baby, you're going to completely decline. Like, everything's going to come back with a vengeance. And it was true. Like my little 3-week-old baby, I struggled to pick him up. My arms were so weak. My wrists were so weak. I ended up going to an ortho doctor, and he gave me shots in my wrist, and that helped take away the pain. But I was like, I feel
were
so
those
young.
Like cortisone shots or?
Exactly. That's exactly what it was. Cortisol shots.
Why would being pregnant help you to feel better?
I don't know. Maybe it's some of the hormones or something that actually made you feel better. I'm not sure. I don't remember what, if I asked her or not, but I just felt so young, and I felt like this is way too young for me to be having all of these issues. And so I came across this article where this woman had MS, was breaking down. She literally was in a wheelchair, and she decided to do a juice fast. They told her she had like 3 months to live. She did a juice fast and was completely healed when she took all the sugar and all of that out of her diet. So lo and behold, I said, okay, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a 30-day juice fast. And I did it, and I felt amazing. But then afterwards, when I went back to the SAD diet, it's like some of those things came back, and it never got to the level that it was when she was trying to put me on chemo. But I noticed I just wasn't feeling the greatest. But so I kept doing these juice fasts, and I would drop a whole lot of weight, and I would feel amazing. but I had nowhere to go after that. So I really struggled
Hmm.
after that. And so I ended up doing a 30-day water fast, and that was incredible.
Wow.
Yeah, because I was so desperate to fix it. I was so desperate to feel better. I was like, well, no, looking back now, Ade, I'm like, how in the world did I do this stuff? But then after that, I found
With a young
um,
child, no less.
with a young child, and I found this thing called the Hallelujah Diet. I don't know if any
Yeah.
of your listeners have ever heard of it. So I said, oh, that's it. I'll do that. And, that was no sugars, no grains, no artificial sweetener, no carbonated water. Like for some reason, the carbonation, so it was all of this stuff trying to take out. And I did it. I did it. And I lost like 10 pounds again. But I was like, oh my God, it's so hard to live life without carrying around your dehydrator. And you know what I mean? Like there was just only
Yeah.
certain things you could eat. So then I went vegetarian. Then I went back to being vegan. And then we moved. My husband and I, at the time we were living in Michigan, we moved. And once we moved, I decided, because before I had done triathlons, was a power lifter, incredibly active, rode my bike
Wow.
30 miles. No, this is before. This is before the whole
Oh,
RA
I see.
scare.
I
Yeah,
see.
it was before all of that. So that's why I was so desperate to get back to
Right.
where I was. And so we moved. We ended up moving. And when I moved, I really wanted to do a body fitness competition because the powerlifting had kind of taken me into that vein. So the
Hmm.
trainer that I was with talked to me about going plant-based. And so she did my whole plans and everything, doing plant-based, and had me eating a lot of quinoa, a lot of couscous. I hated it. I hated it. And my husband will confirm this. I was incredibly mean and angry. Literally, I wanted to bite your fingers off. I was like, but I did a lot of keto, not keto. I did a lot of vegan, like meal planning and keto. I'm sorry, I keep saying keto, but vegan desserts. My kids loved those because by that time I had a daughter by then, and they loved it. And so I was like, oh, I'm doing the right thing for my family. We're vegan now. My husband had completely shifted his mindset, like, this is great. But I was so mean. I was so mean. And I consider myself to be a pretty nice person, but I was so mean and angry during that time. I was incredibly moody. And I was talking to my husband one night and I said, I don't feel like me. I do not feel like me. Is this pregnancy? Is this after having kids? Like, I just wanted me back. Workouts didn't feel good. I was exhausted. I was doing like 2-hour trainings. I would do 2 hours in the morning, an hour at night.
Wow.
I wasn't dropping any weight. I stayed the exact same, but I was angry and my muscles were sore and tired, and it wasn't fun. And I'm a firm believer, and if it's not fun, I'm not going to do it just to do it. Like, training for a body competition, I see a lot of people who will drop weight and they're really angry because they're getting all the fat out and they're trying to lean out. And I was like, I don't want to do that. Like, I want to do it for the sport and just the beauty of the body and things like that. I don't want to do it to be mean and angry. So I stopped doing it because mentally and physically I just couldn't take it anymore. And so we were building a house. We built our house. We moved into our home, and I still didn't really feel completely like me. But at least I wasn't mean anymore. I was at least nice. but and so I just came. I was studying for the bar. I had done law school. I was studying for the bar, and I came across keto randomly on a study break. I was like, I need to do anything besides the law right now. And keto popped up on my computer, and I was like, this can't be real. This really? I can eat this stuff that I like? Oh my God. Because I'll tell you, after being vegan, I still don't like the smell of couscous or quinoa. I don't even like the smell anymore. Like, I don't even like the smell. I was like, oh, wait, not having to eat another plant. Okay. The lesson or whatever. So I did keto easily and dropped almost 30 pounds in like a month and a half. It was significant and it was fast, and I dropped really fast. But I went back to the keto baking. I was doing fat bombs. I was doing all of that. I a day the cravings were out of this world. Raging cravings. Like, I was constantly thinking about food, constantly trying to fit everything into the macros and then I would be pissed that I couldn't fit it into the macros and I can't eat this and I can't, you know, like I was just, I guess I had kind of gone back to that raging, being angry, like this isn't, But because I had had such success, I thought, well, I know it's working. Okay, I'm starting to get a little bit of energy and I see, you know, my ketones like going up. I'm measuring those every day. I'm like, okay, I'm doing all the right things. But the cravings, I constantly thought about food, constantly thought about when the next time was to eat, what I was going to eat, you know, how I could stop and make a pack of peanuts work in there. And, you know, I'd be at work and that's what I would be thinking about. And so, again, I was one day randomly came across zero carb health. And I read that, and my initial reaction was, this is a heart attack waiting to happen. This is crazy. This is the craziest fad I've ever seen. Like, this is ridiculous. But at that time, I started having really bad sleep, and I had really, my energy was kind of all over the place. And so, but the thing that got me was when those people kept saying, I have no cravings. I haven't, and I was like, what is a world without cravings? Like, I can't even imagine. That's where I was sold. I was completely sold on that and the potential to have energy through the roof. And so I shifted to carnivore. And my first time shifting to carnivore after keto, I completely had that body recomp. It was quick. Like within a month, I felt like I looked totally different, but I was the same size. Like as far as weight, I was the same weight, but I was wearing clothes from when I was in high school. You know, so that's how significant it was that my body was totally recomped. I had the whole, you know, what everybody says about the abs, and I had that, and I was just really bulking up. But the thing that for me was that I was losing a lot of weight in my face, and I didn't like it. I didn't like it. I did not like that my face looked like it was kind of a little bit sunken in. I didn't like it. I have a really, you know, I've always had like a chubby face, and I felt like it looked so foreign to me. So I stopped. And I thought, well, let me try putting a little bit of the keto and carnivore. Let me put a little bit of those carbs back in so I can feel like I'm a little bit fuller. I'm not dropping so quickly. And it was just, you know, uncomfortable to me. But as soon as I did, the cravings came back with a vengeance. It just did not feel good. Why not
just add more food or add more, you know, fat or more calories? Like,
I know.
I didn't. You could.
Yeah, but you know, when you're in that thing and you're trying to figure out, well, how can I go back to some of those old treats and make it work? Oh, this is a really good excuse to go back to some of my old, you know, ways of eating. And so I did that. And it wasn't good. It was not good. So at the beginning of the year, I tried to go back to carnivore. And my sleep was totally off. Like all of that zen, all of that goodness I had the first time around, it was not the same. And I'm going to tell you, at the beginning of 2020, I had 4 months where I didn't sleep. Like I was waking up, I was having what felt like hot flashes all night. I just could not get a good night's sleep. And I was like, if this is how it's going to be, oh my God, I just need one. And I mean, literally every day I was begging the gods for, please just give me one good night of sleep, please. And then I was like, am I going through menopause? Like, I feel like I was too young to be in menopause, but I wasn't sure. And so again, I kind of fell back on carnivore, and I was like, I don't know how to work this thing out. But every time I did SAD or went back to that didn't feel right either. Yeah. So during the summer of this year, I made the decision to go back to the basics. And I said, so I made the decision during the summer. I just really, just got with myself, and I said, what's the best that I've ever felt? In everything that I've done, what's the best that I've ever felt? And I had to take it back to when I very first started carnivore. I didn't do a lot of dairy. I did basically, beef, water, and maybe I added a little bit of cheese to it, but that was it. And I remember waking up. There were days that I woke up and I remember like I would be driving to work and I was like, I'm just happy for no reason. I'm just happy, and I just found myself kind of looking around like, this feels so awesome. I'd wake up without an alarm. I'd wake up like, bling, okay, I'm ready to go. This is awesome. So I went back to that. I went back to that over the summer, and I just made the decision, if I never drop another pound, if nothing else ever changes, as long as I mentally feel good, then I'm just going to go with that. I don't want to
Nice.
do any, quick macros to lose this. I don't want, keep quick keto, because I know that probably if I went back to keto and doing macros, maybe I would drop, again really quickly. But I was like, at this point in my life, I want to feel good, and I want to know that I'm investing in me for when I'm older.
Yeah.
When those times when you're older and you don't necessarily want to lose weight because you want to keep your curves and you want to stay a little bit full. I was like, well, maybe I might be a little fluffy on this end, but later it's gonna all pay off. So I'm just gonna stay happy. So that's what I did. And then I found myself, one of the things for me that really changed was the salt. I was eating a lot of butter and a lot of salt, because I had a carnivore coach who told me to try the like 80 grams of protein and the 200 grams of fat. I
Oh
tried
God.
that.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh.
And so I tried that, and it's always like that thing of when you initially do something, it feels good. And that's how it was at first. At first, it felt really good, but then I felt so weighted down, and I felt really fluffy. Like I felt like everything was really fluffy. And so I decided, I was like, you know what? I'm just not going to add it just to add it because of somebody else's formula. I
Yeah.
really want to hone into me and figure out what feels good to me. And so I backed off on the salt. That whole electrolytes thing. I just, I let all that go, and I just ate what felt good at the moment. And I dropped like 10, almost 15 pounds, like just like that. And so
Wow.
that's the day that I took the picture, that thumbnail that everybody saw. I took it that day because I was like, I feel so great. Let me just see
Yeah.
if there's a difference. I didn't even know if there would be a difference, but when I saw the picture side by side, I was like, okay, the picture shows how I feel right now. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of where I am. And I just really love not sitting around daydreaming about food. I love that. I love
Yeah.
being able to, have a meal of something that I really, really, really like. Like I love pork belly. Like to sit down and to have some good pork belly, and I don't think about food the rest of my life. Like I love that. I love that. And so my parents, they're much older now and they're kind of aging. And my dad, when I'm eating around them, my dad is like, "You're not afraid about a heart attack and cholesterol?" Like he's
Yeah.
going through the whole thing. And then I kind of just stop and I say, "You guys have known me all my life. If you think about all the transitions of what you've seen, what do you think, Dad?" And then he'll look at me and he'll say, "Oh yeah, it's working for you." Like even he's like, gosh, and my parents look at me like it's otherworldly. Like they're almost like, "Oh, that could only possibly work for you." Like,
Yeah.
because again, and
Yeah.
particularly in the Black community, they're like, "Carnivore who? Carnivore what? Like what is that?" So,
Yeah.
and I saw my dad has been having some issues with his eyes, and I noticed lately, like he told me that he's like, I'm going to try vegan. Like a lot of people are doing vegan and they're trying this, and I kind of, everybody has to find their own path. I'm not a vegan basher or anything like that. It didn't work for me personally. It didn't make me feel my best. But if other people find success with it, I don't bash it. But one thing about it, and I left this part out of, my early, I've dealt with digestive issues since I was in high school. It started right before I went to college. So, I'm in my 40s now. So I had digestive issues over 20 years, like really. And then this may be too much information, but for somebody who's struggling, I would love for them to know. I had a hole in my intestine, and the way that doctors had me fixing it was to eat more fiber. They had me on Metamucil, or eating more fruits and vegetables, and I did all of that they told me to do. And there's days, like even after I got married, that I'd be crying to my husband saying, "I'm doing everything they're telling me to do, and it's not working. I'm in so much pain." And since I've been carnivore, not one, like I do not deal with any digestive. down to like really blood in my stool, like everything, the whole nine. None of that whatsoever at all.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
so I have a gazillion questions. All of that is major. But let me start with my last question, which is, wait, and a hole in your intestine? Is this like an
I did.
ulcer? Like, does it
Did no.
leak into your body cavity, like food? And is that what I don't know. How does that work?
It's a great question. So it's a fissure. So if anybody's ever had a fissure, it's like a little tear in the inner parts of your intestine. To my knowledge, it didn't leak into my system, but anytime I had to use the restroom, it was an incredible amount of pain. It was a lot of pain, and like I said, there was, I had bloody stool all the time from it, and it was just painful. It was just something. And it was, and it's embarrassing to have to go to the doctor to say, hey, can you check that out? Because I'm in a lot of pain, just all of that. It was not a fun thing to have at all. And like I said,
Yeah.
I had it over 20 years. I dealt with it. I was in the military too. So even when I was in basic training, trying to deal with this issue and train and, go on
Yeah.
those 20-mile road hikes and be in the field, I'm sleeping in a tent and I'm having to deal with these digestive issues. And so
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I would have to have my mom to send me cases of, the oral laxative, for me to make it through basic training. So when
Wow.
people ask me about now, like when people try to come at me with the fear of, aren't you afraid of this? Aren't you afraid of this? And I always stop them by saying, you know what? After 20 years of finally being able to use the bathroom, I'm good. I am
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
So I have to put it into perspective for people when they say, well, aren't you? And I'm saying, listen, I tried vegetarian, I tried vegan, I tried it all. None of those things gave me relief. So it's really difficult for me to argue with the first time in 20 years that I'm telling you a day, even down to like when it's time for me to go to bed, I'm like, yeah, versus
Yeah. Yeah.
it just used to be like I would mentally have to
Yeah.
prepare myself to have to use the restroom. If you can imagine doing that for 20 years, and carnivore took that away for me. Like I
Yeah.
still, again, TMI, but I'm just gonna make it plain. Like literally, when I use the bathroom, I turn around. I'm like, who? You never could have told me that eating meat would produce this
Yeah.
like small amount of waste that is
Yeah.
wonderful to sit down and use the restroom. I mean, and I can only say that just because of where I came from, of how
Hmm.
painful and difficult it was to do something as simple as use the restroom.
Well,
So
I really
yeah.
appreciate your sharing that. I mean, yeah, it does. It's sometimes people, this is the only thing that people are interested in when I say I'm on a carnivore diet. But I think that represents, or that is because so many people have so many different digestive problems. So you're
Yeah.
sharing that is really helpful, and I'm sure that's going to be helpful for somebody. And I am so glad that you found relief. And wow,
Yeah.
I can't believe so. I mean, I can't believe doctors were like, okay, well, just, keep on chucking those,
Oh,
laxatives. Good luck.
yeah.
I mean,
You,
like,
you
that's
know,
all they offer you?
and it's almost like they're so used to it. Like I know my dad.
Hmm.
My dad struggled with bathroom issues, not to the point that I did, but like, there's so many other people that I've friends
Hmm.
who have like, yeah, I just deal with it. I know I'm gonna have bathroom issues. Like so many people around me do deal with it, and so but literally, like doctors really like came at me like, just increase your fiber.
Hmm.
Really, you don't think I've tried that? Like,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
it, to me, it just, I personally didn't feel like saying take Metamucil for the rest of your life was a fix, and
Yeah.
when I said, is there anything more? And pretty much most doctors basically said it to me as if I was going to have to take a laxative for the rest of my life and, just get used to it. It is what it is. This is how your body works. But I think about that. in, my medical history of all the different times in my life that the doctor said, well, you're just going to have to deal with this. Like with the laxative that, when I was 18, basically I could have been taking a laxative for the rest of my life. But at some point, a laxative doesn't work anymore. Like you can only take so much and people increase to a point where it doesn't work. I know because I was there. Like I would take, laxative for so long or whatever. And then there would come a point where I'm like, okay, either I'm going to be taking like 10 laxatives or I'm going to figure out what to do for my body. That and the RA, the doctor with the RA who said, you're going to be on chemo the rest of your life. Could you imagine if I was on chemo right now? I've had 3 children and her saying that, it could have totally shifted my fertility. Had I started chemo to put something that heavy in my body for the rest of my life. Like,
well, I mean, that was going to be my next question. Like, can we go back to the RA? Like, well, first of all, do you still have it? Or do you find that your symptoms are all gone now that you've been on carnivore?
Oh yeah, even down to right before I started carnivore, I was starting to have issues with my knees, and I had never had issues before, but I was starting to have issues with my knees. And since being on carnivore, that is not the same anymore. The pain in my wrist and my hands, I used to wake up. It used to be very difficult for me to write. I found that the older I was getting, the more difficulty I was having holding a pencil and writing, and particularly writing for long term, especially being in law school and finding that I was having a really difficult time writing. That, and then the other thing was every morning when I would get out of the bed, literally, I would brace myself for each step going to the bathroom because my feet hurt so bad. I don't have that at all whatsoever. There's no hesitation when I get out of the bed in the morning. And funny enough, I'm a professor. So I work at a university grading papers and having to write all day. I don't even think about it anymore. I even told my husband, because this is exam time, our university, we're ending up now in this exams, and I was grading papers, and I said to him, I was like, oh my God, it doesn't hurt to write anymore. It does not hurt to hold a pencil anymore. So, yeah.
Yeah. Wow, your students must be like, what have you been doing, Professor? You look so different.
I did have a student that came to my office one day, and she's a non-traditional student. She's older and she's Jamaican, so she's like, I don't mince my words, Professor. I said, I know you don't. And she was like, you look amazing. How much weight have you lost? And I was like, actually, I don't know. And at the time I said, I actually don't know. I can, I do know that I've lost weight. I was like, but I don't know. And she was like, oh my God, and she was very slender. So I didn't feel, that I needed to figure it out and tell her. Now, if it had been a student who was asking me because they wanted wanted to be able to do it, then I would have taken more time to figure it out. But with her, I knew she was just like, wow, and she had the perspective in it. And she shared this in class one day that Americans, their diets are so unhealthy. Like she said that one day in class. So, she said that when she came to the U.S., like she was just shocked at how unhealthy Americans are. She said, because, growing up, you hear about America and the U.S. and you just assume that they're living the lavish lifestyle and they're eating the best foods. And she said, I came here and that's not the case. So,
or we think we're eating the best foods.
Yeah.
Wow. So, I mean, I don't know a whole lot about rheumatoid arthritis, but I, had never heard that chemotherapy was like part of the treatment plan. And I guess I had always assumed that chemotherapy, essentially you wouldn't ever be able to have children if you started undergoing that treatment. So that seems like an unbelievable thing to say to a very young person, without. And then, wanting you to make that decision while you're in the office, like, wow. So, that doesn't make me have a lot of confidence in that person. And that's.
And then to the point to say, as I was getting my things to walk out the door, she reiterated again. She said, you just remember, if you walk out of this office, we can never get you back to where you are today. you're going to go downhill every single day. And whenever you choose to come back and finally start this procedure, that's as good as you're ever going to be. You just need, like, so she reiterated it even as I was getting my things to
Wow.
leave. And I said, okay, I hear you.
But even though you didn't get on the carnivore or keto diet, like even the fasting alone or the juice fasting alone was enough to help improve some of the
Yes.
symptoms. So, wow. I mean, I wonder how many people walk away thinking like that's their only option.
Oh yeah. Oh
Wow.
yeah. Like my mom struggles with gout, and I see her in constant pain. And so I've seen, like, she went from no medications to now being on like 8 different medications, because it's that thing of,
Hmm.
once a doctor puts you on one thing, then the liver starts to have issues, and then you got to have something
Yeah.
for that, and then the gallbladder starts to. That's absolutely, in the last 5 years, what I've seen happening to her. And I know she's so curious, and she asked me, and I share my story and my journey with her a lot. And she would love to do it, but she lives with my dad, who she still, they're old school, and she still cooks for him. And she's like, oh, your dad would never want to do that. And so now they're both trying to lose weight, and they're eating like cottage cheese and light, that diet bread. And I'm like,
Hmm.
I'm trying to say, no, you
I
don't
mean,
have
even
to
if
do
they could
that.
get keto, that would be good.
Right. Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's exactly what I've told my mom. And I think she feels overwhelmed, because she always asks me, it goes to the same place every time. But how do I know these macro things, and how? So it
Yeah.
totally goes to that. And so I always tell, I'm like, well,
Yeah.
mom, with carnivore, you don't have to do any of that. Just eat the meat that you like.
Yeah.
And so her fear, she's in her 60s now. We've all been taught that certain way of how you're supposed to do it. And it's so anti, because she was that 70s, 80s, 90s, where you eat cottage cheese and one boiled
Hmm.
egg. And so
Yeah.
it's heartbreaking. But I continue to share my story. And like, I saw her last week. I was at my parents' house last week, and I walked through the door, and she was like, whoa, what are you doing? I'm like, mom, same thing, I'm just eating meat. Like, you
Right.
see, this is what I eat. But it's so hard. Like, she's like, that can't be it. Like, tell me what you're really doing. I was like, that's really what I am doing.
Yeah.
The other thing too, a day, is that I lost a lot of my hair with keto. I definitely was the person
Wow.
who, 6 months after doing keto. Now, the first 6 months, I was like, oh, great, it didn't happen to me. I still have all my hair. It didn't happen. But sure enough, like, within probably around months 8, it clumps of my hair fell out in the shower, and it
Mm.
was it was just really devastating. It was really hard. And at the time, my aunt, who I loved dearly, loved her dearly, was going through cancer, and she was losing hair, and I was losing hair. And I just, it gave me so much compassion for her and what she was going through. And I eventually did lose her, but I was still losing hair. And I just was like, this isn't this okay. And so again, I try to come to that place of acceptance of, maybe it'll never come back. But with carnivores, you see, it's just,
Nice.
yeah. And so that's the other thing, because my mom definitely noticed that I'd lost a lot of hair. And so when
Hmm.
I go home, that's the thing that she says the most, is like, I just cannot believe meat did that for your hair. And I was like,
Yeah.
that's the only difference, mom, is that I
Yeah.
choose to eat till I'm satisfied, and I stop. And again, she's just like,
Yeah.
you sure you didn't put anything on your hair? You didn't, was it a supplement? So it's
Yeah.
like she's always looking for
Yeah.
that supplement, that thing that, and I'm like, this really is steak hair. I did this with
Yeah.
steak and pork belly, mom. you know.
Well, I wonder about that because you were talking about doing a lot of exercise. You had built up a lot of muscle before. Later on, you were doing more exercise, but you did a whole lot of long term, juice or water fasting. Like
Yeah.
you must have, lost a lot of muscle and not really
Hmm.
had enough protein. And even when keto, I don't know what what your macros were, but like do you think you were eating enough protein, or in retrospect, do you think you probably should have been eating more?
I definitely fell into that because I see some people, on your site now, who really worries about eating too much protein and all of that, and being. I definitely fell into that because I was like, because I'd had so much to lose that I felt like, oh, am I doing this wrong? But that's where the frustration really came into play for me, is that trying to figure out, do I eat more protein? Do I eat more fat? Do I not? Do I fast? Do I intermittent fast? Do I have 24-hour fast? I was so fed up during the summer that, oh my goodness. And so I definitely think I was not eating enough protein, because it wasn't until I put all the numbers away that my hair started growing back. When I tried to
Hmm.
stay in that 80 to 100 grams of protein, my hair just would not grow.
Hmm.
When I let that go is when I started to see the difference. So now I don't even know anymore.
Hmm.
I don't even know where I am on the protein scale. I do know that, like, the pork belly, like, I've been eating pork belly for the last 2 weeks just because I've been enjoying it so much. And there's times that I'll stop and say, "Oh, is this too much? Is this?" And then I'm like, this is where I've just been feeling good these last 2 weeks. So I'm gonna
Hmm.
see this through and figure it out. So I definitely think I wasn't eating enough protein, for sure.
Wow.
And you're absolutely right. I do think that the juice fasting, while it cleared up the RA and it got, but I was eating a lot of sugar because I worked in the city. I worked near the Midtown Tunnel, and I was on,
Yeah.
I was on the LIRR every day, and the stress, and the 10-hour days, and
Yeah.
so I was eating to get through those stressful days and the
And
commute
the
home.
hardest thing for me, the thing that still gives me some cravings is when I'm in the Midtown area, those they have those carts with
Yes,
the nuts that they, roast them,
yes,
and they smell
yes.
so sweet, and I'm like,
Oh,
"Oh, I want some."
oh,
That's
and
the
this
only
time of
thing.
year, oh my gosh, and
Yes.
this time of
Yes.
year, being in the city for Christmas, it's the
Yeah.
best ever. The pandemic is trying to change all that,
Yeah.
but yeah, those smells, and oh my gosh,
Hmm.
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure, yeah, and
Wow. So, but I'm really impressed that you decided to just, throw out all the rules, everything you had been told, because like you, I felt the same kind of like total indecision. And, when everybody's telling you eat less of this, less of this, less of this, all you're left with is like nothing. And, that's right. And that's not sustainable. So,
no,
something comes down, other things have to come up. And so it was really frustrating to like try to be biohacking and figuring out
oh
what these
gosh,
numbers were. So
yeah.
until I just decided I'm just going to eat what I like and as much as I want of it, like that was when I got that, relaxation that you're describing. So that's fantastic. I'm so glad that you
Oh,
did that too.
yeah. Well, I realize, because when you take away the sugar and you take away the fillers and all of that stuff, like, there are times with carnivore when I first started, that I will be so satisfied. And then there's just periods where I'm trying to figure out how to fix, like, maybe I'm craving, like the other night I was craving cookies. Now, I haven't craved cookies and I can't tell you how long. And so I made the oopsie recipe that
Hmm.
Kelly Hogan has. I turned it into cookies. I just made that oopsie recipe, and I made some dollops. And then, I made it, and I baked it until it looked like a peanut butter cookie, actually. But then I stopped and I was like, what is it that I'm really, because I have not wanted a cookie. I can't tell you. My kids, they've made Christmas cookies, Thanksgiving cookies, they want it, and it does
Hmm.
not phase me at all. And so with carnivore, I've had to also do the inner work of, what is it I'm really craving? What's really stressing me? Where's the anxiety coming from? Because now that I've experienced what it feels like to be satiated from food, it is very evident to me when I'm emotionally looking for something that's totally
Hmm.
not food related. But I
Yeah.
never saw that until I did carnivore. Like
Hmm.
keto, I was all over the place with
Hmm.
trying to figure out how to ketofy everything,
Hmm.
and it never took me to the emotional healing that I was looking for too. Because
Hmm.
one of the things that I dealt with in the midst of all of that is I lost a child, in the midst of this whole journey. And
I'm so
and I
sorry.
was Oh, thank you so much. But when I was keto, like I was always looking for something to cover that whenever I had those feelings of missing her or whatever. But carnivore took me to a place of where I could really stop and just do that inner work of, this is grief. It's okay to be sad and miss her. And okay, and just sit with that versus trying to find something to cover it up. That's one
Mhm.
of the other gifts that carnivore gave me. So
Wow. That is such a powerful statement. Yeah. So, I mean, so many people like go through therapy all their lives. Are like, why do I overeat? Why do I need to do
yeah.
this? And I was really surprised that, like, once I got into ketosis and I got acclimated and got good at it and removed the sugar, it's like so many of those neuroses I saw were either created by the sugar or created by my feelings about what I was doing or what I look like. But none of these things were like natural existing things. They were just all
Yes.
created around this, around these foods that are just, or let's say items that we choose to eat that are not really food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ade, do you find
Yeah.
yourself like even talking about the smells with the nuts? There are certain restaurants that I totally associate with a certain feeling. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh my gosh, I gotta totally relearn all of this. Like
Yeah.
early in my journey, like it would be like really cold outside and our family's watching a football game or and so automatically I associate that with nachos and this and this and this, all these different foods that I associated fun family nights with that I was like, but I did not like it. Like I was kind of irritated that I
Hmm.
connected food to, relationship and having a good time and family gatherings. And so it totally, like carnivore told me, totally rethink that stuff. And now, I've heard so many people say it, and I'm sure you've probably said it too, but now like relationships feel really, really real. Um,
Hmm.
over Thanksgiving, over Thanksgiving, my best friend lost both of her parents this year. And so at the beginning of the pandemic, we were intentional about making ourselves a bubble. So we both of all of our kids have been virtual learning, and we said we would be in each other's bubble. So if we needed that social outlet, this is where we'll come. And we're
Hmm.
very conscious not to step outside of our bubble and potentially expose. So
Hmm.
over Thanksgiving, our bubble came together for Thanksgiving, and there was so much food. There was so much food, and my husband, he knows I'm carnivore. He is like ketovore, so he's really, but he's really fit and trim. He's ran track all of his life, so but he was intentional to
Hmm.
make sure that I had the things that I liked there, and I made sure to have some other things there, or whatever. And I'm sitting there, and I had this big plate of food. I hadn't eaten all day because I wasn't hungry. So we sat down to Thanksgiving dinner. I took one bite, and I was like, I'm just not hungry. And so I sat at the table, and
Oh,
we talked
wow.
about like fun times, like some stuff that our husbands didn't even know. We're like, yeah, because we've been friends forever. And we talked about that. And at the end of the night, my plate was still essentially full. And I was like, oh, this is great. Like I didn't have that need to devour
Yeah.
just because it was Thanksgiving dinner. And I just remember journaling that night saying, wow, this is another gift that carnivore has given me, that I didn't even think about the food, and I pretty much hadn't eaten all day, but I just,
Hmm.
it wasn't a thing. Like I didn't feel the need to gouge just because it was Thanksgiving. So
Yeah. Wow. My God, so many wins. That's like amazing.
yeah,
Amazing.
yeah,
And it's great when we can, find other ways to, or other traditions to associate the holidays with so that we don't have that food association. I
yeah,
know one of
yeah.
the things I did was after holidays, after holiday meals, I would force everybody to play board games. So that would force us to clean off the table, put the food away, and have a break between dinner and dessert at least, and like, to play the games. And so
Oh,
that was a
yeah.
way to kind of, break the break the connection. Sorry, my dog I hear doing something. Um, but kind of break that connection with food and then be
Mhm.
able to like enjoy people and
Oh,
bring
yeah.
relationship back to the focus, because I think like you, it's like it's not anybody's focus. Everybody's focus is on, the food.
Oh my gosh. I saw in so many different, carnivore groups where people were like, oh, I'm going to struggle. It's Thanksgiving. I really want to have my mom such and such, or I really want to have. And I just sat there with so much gratitude that I was like, there's not anything that's calling my name. Like, there's nothing that I was like, oh my God, so miss not having this.
Yeah.
I was so grateful for that's just, not the case. And I felt like it was a huge blessing to have
Hmm.
that there wasn't anything I was white knuckling it through. But also, there was the thing that I was like, I can eat whatever I want. You know what I mean? Like there was that freedom of, oh, I can eat whatever I want. Like I have this big pile of food and I was like, yeah, if I want to have it, I can. But um, I didn't have to. There wasn't this, I didn't have to say, please help me resist. I'm in the corner shaking, like I didn't have that at all. So it was,
Yeah.
just
So the
grateful.
RA is gone, the cravings are gone, the digestive problems are gone. Anything else that you found healing, following this way of eating?
Yeah, the mental, the RA, the joint pains, the hair, I got some of my hair back,
Oh
which was
yeah.
awesome. And I think that the other thing too is I saw it when I first became a carnivore. People would talk about their teeth. I definitely felt like I always have had like kind of white teeth, but then I was drinking coffee all through law school and all of that.
Yeah.
But I feel like my teeth are whiter again without me doing anything. Like it's not like I use the de-stainer or anything like that. Stuff like that. I think the other thing too is just the like I thought I saw somebody talk about during the summertime that they tan so easily and they don't necessarily get burned. I feel
Hmm.
like that was me too. That just the skin. There was a point. Oh my gosh, when I first went vegetarian, and I was drinking so much soy milk and almond milk. My skin. I had capsules like the acne, the cystic acne, which
Oh
I had never
wow.
had my entire life. I had it here on my cheek. I had it a little bit on my forehead and then here. And I mean, just like explosions on my face. And I was just like, I didn't even have this kind of acne when I was a teenager. But my sister in law was the one that helped me. She said, I saw an esthetician in Chicago, and she said, if you have a vegan vegetarian diet and you're drinking a lot of
Hmm.
soy, you might want to reconsider. And sure enough, I took soy out of my diet and they completely went away. So it was
Wow.
just different things like that. But it's so funny now because my sister-in-law and my brother recently this year they are now vegan. They went vegan this year.
Oh.
And I know. And so my brother is 6'7" too. He used to play professional basketball. And so I'm
Six,
just watching his
seven.
journey.
How
He is
much can
six
he?
seven.
How does he get enough food from vegetables
I
to
said the
feed
same
him?
thing. Okay, so don't tell anybody, but let me tell you. On Thanksgiving, my parents had a mini Thanksgiving for them, and me and my brother went to see them after the holidays was over. And my brother went to my mom's house just to eat some chitterlings. You know how the proper chitterlings, but the southern way is chitlins. He
Yeah.
was there and ate a big bowl, and we just sat there and watched him. And I was
Yeah.
like, "Was it good?" And he was like, "Oh, that was so satisfying. I can go back to
Mhm.
my vegan life now." So he has his moments where he really is like, "Okay, I just need." But his
I just
his
need a big
wife,
bowl of meat, and then I can go back to vegan.
and then I
But
can
I just
go
need
back.
another big bowl of meat, and then I can go
Right?
back to vegan. It's like, well,
Exactly.
maybe that's not working for you.
Right, exactly. And so I share my journey with him because he knows 4 years ago I was vegan. It was just 4 years ago. We
Hmm.
were vegan for 2 years.
Two
And so
years.
for 2 years,
Wow.
2 years, I did that hallelujah vegetarian thing for a year, and then we transitioned into vegan.
Hmm.
And and
So
so
no eggs, no dairy, no. Oh my god, that's
nope,
awful.
I did the whole B12 cheese. I used to make a vegan Alfredo sauce with onions and oh, it was
Oh.
it was it was I never could quite get that vegan cheese. I never could get that quite right. But
And so how
yeah.
did your pain and inflammation not get worse when you were doing vegan?
Oh, I think it did. I think it did get worse.
Oh,
Those were one of the times in that period of time when I was vegan, that was one of the times that, and it's the only time in my life this has ever happened. But I had, oh, what do you call it? There's a technical word for it. Hives. I had hives all over my body. I had red splotches all over my body. I was itching so bad. It happened to me like 3 different times. The third time I ended up in the ER because I couldn't sleep. I was itching so badly.
wow.
That happened while I was vegan. I have never had it ever again since. I've never had hives any other time in my life except that 2 year period that I was vegan. And it
So while
happened
on
like 3 different
vegan, you
times.
had crazy hives, horrible
Yeah.
cystic acne, more inflammation, and more pain.
Hmm.
And
Oh,
how were you
and
doing all that weightlifting, while vegan?
oh, I wasn't
Or the
consistent.
working out? You had said you were
Yeah.
doing like 2 workouts a day, but
Yeah.
how are you
I
doing that?
that period of time when I'd made the decision to do the body competition, I hung in there for about 2 months. I only made it 2 months with the working
Oh,
out. So I totally stopped the working
right.
out, continued being vegan. But yeah,
Yeah.
I just couldn't maintain it. I just felt
Yeah.
really weak. Like my legs just felt so weak. I would be on the treadmill trying to do the hour run that she wanted me to do. And I enjoy running,
An
but I
hour of
just couldn't do.
running.
She wanted me to
Jesus.
do an hour of cardio, and I would try to do it, and oh, just thinking about it, I'm like, but I would be so angry afterwards. I would be angry, I would be hungry, and I would
Yeah.
be exhausted.
Yeah.
And so the two definitely do not mix. And throw in young children with that too. Oh, I was
Yeah.
so mean. I
But
was so mean.
that just is a testament to your strength, your persistence, your ability. I mean, look at the unbelievable amount of self control and willpower you put
Oh,
in for years to fight your own body's signals and to do things that were counterintuitive and to go through pain and still not stop. Like, I sometimes, I mean, I know we get frustrated by the things that we've done and with the poor information that we had, but, the reality that we had that level of commitment and persistence, that we just need to rechannel that, energy. Now that
oh,
we can free it
yeah.
up, we can rechannel that, and man, we could like solve world, bring about world
Oh, yeah.
peace and solve
Oh,
all
yeah.
of the political problems. We can
Oh my
fix
God.
everything. Yeah.
Again, not to bash the vegans whatsoever at all, but I firmly believe everybody is moving to veganism. Everybody's moving to veganism, and we're the most divided we've ever been. And my theory is everybody is hungry and angry because I
Yeah.
was when I was a vegan. But
Yeah.
I see the stories of my friends. Oh, so many of our friends are vegan now, and I see their stories about losing a lot of weight and being happy and healthy. And I'm like, more power to them or whatever. I just know what the ending was for me. And but the thing is, Ade, the thing for
Hmm.
me is that when I see people struggling to like you said, when I see them struggling trying to stay with a certain way of life, I just know for me personally, especially the older I get, I don't want to be thinking about a diet. I do not
Yeah.
want to be thinking about numbers the rest of my life. I just think that a lot of us who have been in the diet cycle, most of our lives, I feel like there's so much life sometimes I feel like we miss out on because we're so focused on, did I get this diet right? Did I get these numbers right? No, 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 I can't have that. No, no, no.
Hmm.
And that's the thing with carnivore. If I felt like, oh gosh, I really want some ice cream, but I can't. I would reconsider. I would totally reconsider this thing because, like I said, the older I get, the more I want it to be
Hmm.
effortless and just a
Right.
natural way of being. And so the fact that I can eat my carnivore meal at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I can eat everything I want. Like yesterday, I had a pork butt steak and I had some ground beef.
I have a
And
pork butt I made this morning and it's sitting on the oven. And when I heard noise before, I was like, oh my God, please don't let the dog be in the kitchen.
I know.
And I
See,
can't wait to eat it.
that's how our dog is. When I start cooking it, she is just like sitting
Yeah.
mesmerized, just smelling it. And so, and again, my mom always says, "Are you sure you can eat that?" And I'm like, "Mom, yeah, this is, I
Yeah.
mean, gosh, the world. What was it before pork? Before I knew about, pork butt, I didn't, it's like being able to have that. Like I had that yesterday and for lunch, and my son had a soccer game last night, and I was so content. And when we came home, my whole family was ravenous. They ate, and I was sitting there and I had some water, and I was like talking about the game, and it was time for bed, and I was so content. And I just remember sitting there thinking, gosh, this is just so awesome that I have enjoyed my meal. I've totally enjoyed what I wanted
Hmm.
today, and I get to go to sleep like not because when I was keto, or even when I did Weight Watchers, and I remember doing Weight Watchers and those other things, laying down and thinking about, oh my God, as soon as I wake up, I look my points, I can have this, and that. Oh my God, I cannot wait to wake up just so that I could eat, you know? And so I'm like,
Yeah.
just to be able to go to sleep and not be thinking about what I want to eat the next day is just it's just a huge blessing to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Well, you look amazing. You're glowing. So clearly this way of eating is working for you. And so now all of this time that you freed up, not worrying about what to eat, not, doing like all of this meal planning and fancy grocery shopping and and having lots of energy. What are you doing with all of that? What's next? What are you going to conquer?
Oh my gosh, a day, I have seriously been thinking about this a lot. I've thought about it a lot over the last year. And I thought about, I still would love to do a body competition, but I would love to do a body competition carnivore, to be
Yeah.
able to. My husband just, when at the start of the pandemic last year, he made the decision to leave his six-figure job and do what he absolutely adores. And so he left that job and he started a performance coaching business. And during the pandemic, we've turned our garage into a gym. And seeing my husband so fulfilled every single day, and he knows my carnivore journey, and I've told him, I said,
Hmm.
I still really want to do this, this body competition. He was like, whenever you're ready, I'm ready to train. So
Nice.
I Yeah, so I started, during the summer with the coming back to carnivore and really being, and I said I wasn't going to work out at all during that period of time until I felt ready. And
Hmm.
now I'm more and more, I wake up and I want to go run and I want to go, lift weights again and stuff like that. And so he said, whenever you're ready, I'm here whenever you're ready. So that's
Nice.
one thing that I would love to do because I personally haven't seen, a carnivore woman do it. I've seen carnivores do marathons, I've seen them run, but I haven't seen a carnivore female do a body competition yet. So
Hmm.
that's one of the
I
things I
think
would
there
love
are
to
I
figure
think
out.
there are a few, but yeah, I haven't really seen a lot either. So I'm so excited to see all your pictures, your videos showing us your whole process, your training. Everybody's going to be interested in it. So please document all of it.
Oh,
Yeah.
you know what? I will. Since you said that,
Hmm.
I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
okay.
And well, you should at least have your own Instagram, if not, a YouTube channel so that we can see the video and everything too. Because, there are a lot of people in the Black Carnivore community who really do enjoy working out and who, find encouragement from each other. So definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm excited.
Oh my goodness, I know. You just planted a seed a day. You
Good.
planted a seed. So, okay.
Good. Yeah. And I'm, so I definitely, when you get started, I'd want to have you back because I want to hear about how it's going and, your process. Like, I think that's a really, an interesting thing that I'm sure other people will want to hear and follow themselves. So, yeah.
Oh, that does because I really would love to showcase clean
Hmm.
carnivore. There's so many people who, want to kind of mix it up and, put the keto still in there or do this with plants and things like that and not knocking anybody's journey, but I would love to do a clean carnivore, just seeing how much
Mm-hmm.
just mentally, and it's kind of like what you talked about, the mental space of clearing all the stuff out, the connections with food and coping and, almost addictive behaviors of how you use food, cleaning all that up and it translating to the body as well. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, you have definitely planted a seed.
Good. I definitely want to hear all about it. So the last question I had was, how about your kids? Are they do they eat more meat, or do you restrict sugar, or what do you do?
Yeah. Oh, this is such a great question. That has evolved as well. When our kids were young, we wouldn't let them do sugar because we were in the
Oh,
midst of that whole
good.
hallelujah diet thing, and everything. But my dad is totally, like, oh, that's child abuse. Kids can't have sugar, And I fought him for a really long time. Fought him for a really long time, and I was
Child
doing this.
abuse. No
I know he
candy.
really did. He really did. A lot of people was like, this is just child
Yeah.
abuse. And so I was doing a consulting job, and the person that I was working for, she shared a story with me about her kids going to her mother's house, in the deep south, in the country, and that when her children went with her mother-in-law, that she had to let her be their grandmother the way she knew how to be. And her kids have the best memories from it. And so it really
Hmm.
sat with me. And so I went to my dad and I said, you know what, Dad, I want you to be able to be the grandfather that you want to be to the kids. And so he was like, really? And so what
Yeah.
happened was he would feed my youngest, she's only 6, but when she was like 4 or 5, she would go to his house, they would have ice cream and they would have all of this stuff, and without fail, she would have the bubble guts and it would be everywhere, every
Oh.
single time. And so
So
finally,
finally, he's
it
like, no more. I
finally,
don't. I don't want any more
finally.
of
So
this.
exactly. And he was like, oh my gosh, I didn't think this could harm. I was like, yep, all on your
Oh.
watch. That all happened on your watch. And so now he gives them, fruit. He'll give them fruit and he'll try his best to look for like things that, because I tell my dad, I said, Dad, the best way you could go is one ingredient. If you can find things that have one ingredient in it, I'm good with it. And so
Hmm.
now he'll make snack bags for them with all kinds of fruit and, little things like that. And so I do let them, when they go to other people's homes, I let them have whatever because I don't want them to resent. But the other thing I did is I just cook around them. And so
Hmm.
at first, me cooking a pound of ground beef, they would kind of look like, Mom, what are you doing? But now both of my kids, they completely love a bowl of ground beef. They'll have
Hmm.
steaks, whatever. And so whenever they're hungry, my son is a huge athlete now. He's 13 and he plays on an elite soccer team.
Hmm.
Without fail, he always goes for a bowl of ground beef or a steak before a game or after the game. He
Hmm.
used to eat a lot of sugar throughout the day. Like, he would call up his papa and, Papa, can I have, whatever, and would do that. But then even he came to me, he said, you know what, Mom, I just perform so much better when I just have some ground beef or I eat a piece of steak or I have a hamburger. And so now I don't even have to say a word. Before
Yeah.
his games, he doesn't like to eat a lot now. So he will do his games. After the game, he wants a good steak or he wants a bowl of ground beef, or he'll
Wow.
have a hot dog or something like that. He doesn't do a lot of bread anymore because he said he realizes he feels way heavier when he has the bread and all of that stuff. So he's just naturally kind of done it on his own. And our daughter,
So that's
she's
awesome that they're starting to just learn it themselves and
mhm.
understand like the physical consequences themselves.
Oh yeah, yeah, especially the older one. Our
Hmm.
younger one, she, for a really long time, it's really funny, and I guess it came from us, but you would try to give her candy. My dad would try to give her stuff with sugar. She didn't want it. She's just like,
Hmm.
that's not my favorite. And to this day, like my daughter, she loves like a bowl of collard greens, with turkey in it, turkey meat in it. Like that's her
Yeah.
thing. That's what she likes. So
Yeah.
so it's kind of, yeah, they just kind of, they'll see what I'm eating and they'll ask me to cook something and I'll say, all right. And I'll give them like 3 choices of what I would make for myself. And they're like, okay, I'll take that one. But also we don't have it in our house.
Yeah.
because my husband has never been a big sweet eater. That's not, he never has been. Like, you ask, my husband would rather have a bowl of soup and some, something like more so than like a donut. And he's always been like that. So we don't have it in our house. So that hasn't been a big thing. And so when they go to other people's homes too, I just, say whatever you're having.
So, wow, you are raising the next generation of kids who are going to be actually very strong. And do you think they're doing better in school because of eating more
Oh,
meat?
oh, I do. But
Yeah.
the other thing too is like our daughter, she is just naturally, well, I mean, both of our kids too, but even more so, she just has a natural body like a gymnast. Like she is
Mm.
very like sculpted. And I always look at her and I'm like, is that the meat? I'm thinking that to myself because she's so strong and she's so like she just has this muscular little athletic figure. She's tiniest little waist ever. Like she's 6, but she can still wear 3T clothes, but she's not scrawny. She's,
Mm-hmm.
has a
Yeah.
really beautiful athletic build. And so if I have anything to do with it, I'm gonna, you know, I
Yeah.
try my best to say if anybody tells you anything about a diet for healthy, run,
Mm-hmm.
run, run, run. But
Yeah.
my mom tells me the stories about. My mom was 100 pounds when she was in high school. She was the tiniest little thing, and I've seen her very slim, very. And she said it wasn't until she had my brother. My brother's older. She had my brother, and she went for her checkup, and that doctor said, "Okay, you need to start eating 1,000 calories a day to get back to your pre-shape." Yeah, he put on a 1,000 calorie a day diet. And my
Wow.
brother was born in 1972, so this is in the 70s, and that was the advice this doctor gave her. My mom had never had a weight problem up until that time. That was the first diet my mom had ever gone on in her life, and she's been on a diet ever since. And she's in her
Wow.
60s now, about to be 70. That was her first diet, and she's been dieting every day since. And now my mom is extremely overweight.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
she says it all the time. She's like, I wish I would have never
Yeah.
started. She could literally eat whatever she wanted. She would walk everywhere,
Yeah.
never had a weight problem. And it wasn't until she did calorie restriction and all of a sudden, it's been
Yeah.
that way ever since.
Yeah. Oh, the damage that the culture has done to us, telling us what we should be doing, what we should be eating, and it's just so wrong. But
Yeah.
I'm so glad to hear, how much success you've had and how much you've learned, and that you're passing this on to your kids. And I think in time a lot of people will discover that vegan just isn't working for them, and so hopefully they will be able to turn around and look at you and say, hey, you're still slim, still looking good, like what is it you're doing?
Well,
Yeah.
and the other thing too is, in just talking about the kids, I will tell you, my son has 2 vegan friends. Their kids are
Hmm.
vegan. One has been vegan his entire life since he was born. The other, I think their parents kind of shifted to veganism. Both of them are struggling with some really big health issues as kids.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
and I always, if their mom ever asked, I would share my story. But you just don't want to tell people how to parent. Whatever they think is best. Because I'm sure some parents would be like, get on me, like you should
Yeah.
not feed them meat all the time. But the other thing, that I do with my kids too is that I don't do that whole because I learned it through carnivore that you have to eat 3 meals a day and 2 snacks.
Hmm.
I tell my kids, I was like, God gave you a natural signal for your body. If you listen to it, that don't listen to anything else. So literally when they wake up, I'm not the one that's like, okay, you gotta have breakfast, have this now or whatever. I say, let me know when you're hungry. There are days
Well,
that,
do
that
you
both of my
all eat
kids,
together as a family ever, or?
my husband will eat with them sometimes, but like as far as like the mornings, if it's me here by
Hmm.
myself, I always tell them, let me know if you're hungry. My 13-year-old, he cooks for himself, so he'll do
Hmm.
that. But the 6-year-old, I'm like, let me know when your tummy's talking to you, and we'll eat. So there are some days that they don't eat till 11 or maybe even 1, because I want them to trust their inner hunger. I want them to trust, that their stomach and not the clock. So that's also been a shift. And it's funny because my son, we saw his soccer game completely explode when he stopped, eating so much during the day. And again,
Oh,
he's the
wow.
one that, and just last night, my husband was like, well, it was actually 2 nights ago. And he said, are you hungry? It's time. You haven't eaten since this morning. And my son said, you know what, Dad? No, I want to wait a little bit longer because the food is so much better when I'm really hungry. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So yeah, because I tell him that all the time. I'm like, are you really, really hungry? Or are you snacking? And he's like, you know what? I'm not really hungry yet. So that's one
Yeah.
of the other things that I definitely try to teach them.
Excellent. Well, it sounds like you guys are doing a fantastic job, and I'm just really impressed and excited by your success, and and I love that this community was here for you, and that you were
Oh,
able
yeah.
to, get the encouragement and support that you needed to, to stick it through, because right, it is different, and it's arguably weird. So, you do kind of need to have other people to, back you up and say, no, 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 you're doing the right thing. You're doing the right thing.
Oh yeah, and I definitely have to give you your shout out before we finish that you're one of the first Black carnivores that I saw, and I heard your story on Carnivore Yogi, and listening to you because didn't you talk about some digestive issues too?
Oh
Did you
yeah,
talk about some stuff with it? Yeah.
I had
So
lots of problems.
so hearing you and your story, and like I said, I kept you on my on my phone. I saved that interview because I just needed to go back and hear, and I heard about all the weight that you lost too. And so, I just have to tell you before we end again, thank you so much for being willing to put this community together. And I had posted in, another carnivore group, and I think Cynthia is her first name. I can't think of her last name, but she was the one that reached out to me and said, "Hey, there's this really fantastic group with Black Carnivore. You may want to check us out." And I did, and I was like, "Oh, oh, thank you," because I
Yeah.
said it too. I said it too in the group that during this election season, it's been kind of tricky with some of the other carnivore groups, and so I found myself with a lot of eye raises, and some of the things that are said. And
Yeah.
so I'm so grateful for Cynthia even recommending the group to me. So thank you for starting it. Thank you, Cynthia, wherever you are, for bringing me here. And I greatly appreciate you.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad. I'm so glad that it was actually able to be helpful, and for you and so many others. Well, so this was a great conversation, and I look forward to having you back on to hear all about your training, and I think that's going to be really exciting. But we will, we'll definitely chat again soon. And thanks everybody for
Great.
watching. I hope you found it interesting. If anybody has questions for you, can they reach out to you on Facebook, Instagram? Where do they reach you?
Yes, sure, definitely. Facebook, definitely feel free to reach out. I'm on there and you can message me, and I will be more than happy to help out however I can.
Okay, awesome. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching, and I will see you again soon. All right, bye.
Thanks, a day.